Okay, everyone, welcome to the International Business Career Panel. We're happy to see so many faces in the audience today. My name is Cassidy Shafford, and I will be the moderator for today's panel. This afternoon, we have some exceptional guests here to speak to you about the fascinating world of international business. And we would just like to begin by acknowledging and paying respect to the Indigenous people of the land on which we meet, the Mi'kmaq people. Mount St. Vincent University is built on unceded Mi'kmaq territory. We also pay respect to the knowledge embedded in the Aboriginal custodians of this land and to the elders past, present, and future. So, before we get started, there's a couple of housekeeping items I just want to go over. In case of an emergency, we ask everybody to please evacuate to the nearest fire exit. And if you have a personal emergency and need to leave during the panel, we ask you to please exit through the bottom doors. We want to avoid anybody leaving through the top doors. It's just really distracting for everyone in the audience. So if you need to leave, please go through the bottom doors. As many as you know, this is a Learning Passport eligible event. So to keep things efficient, we have passed out your surveys already. So we ask that by the end of the panel, you have those filled out and your activity page filled in for Miriam to give you your stamp on your way out. And we ask you to please turn off your cell phones and refrain from using them during the panel. Our panelists have taken time out to come talk to you, so please try and be as respectful as you can. And we ask you to remain seated if at all possible. And we ask you to also please keep any questions that you do have until the end. We're going to have a 10-15 minute question and answer session where you can ask the panelists anything you want. And after the panel, the panelists will be up here and you can come up and ask them a more private question if you wish. Okay, so I'm going to get started with the first question. Would you please briefly describe the organization you work for and your position? So we'll start with Maria.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Maria Matthews, and I am Director of Vision Atlantic. And we are a receptive tour operator, which means that we deal with travel trade only. We don't deal with consumers. And our markets are the UK, I used to say Europe, but obviously I have to say UK and Europe now, as well as the Chinese markets. And I am currently a director of the company, but I am employed on a consultancy basis because I am in a 2-year negotiation of selling the business. So I'm not involved in day-to-day because I also am a full-time professor here at the Mount in the Business and Tourism Department. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley Jane Chow, and I work for Mount St. Vincent University. Woohoo! As you may or may not know, Mount St. Vincent University is established in 1873, and at that time it was an institution educating women in Canada, the first of its kind. And of course, it is now a co-ed public university. Specifically, I work within the Department of University Relations, and that's taking care of marketing for the university, communications and messaging to the media and the public, alumni relations, fundraising, and the recruitment of students both internationally and domestically to MSVU. And that's where my responsibilities lie. So I am the International Business Development Consultant working in the Office of Student Recruitment, and I specifically forge partnerships internationally, meet with international students and their parents to try and promote the brand name of MSVU and convince them to come and study here at MSVU.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nicole Johnson-Morrison, and I am the President and CEO of EduNova. So EduNova is a unique organization. We are an NGO and the only one of its kind in Canada that represents all international students. So we have all the universities, so all universities are part of our members, all educational institutions. So my colleague to my left, Katie, who works for NSCC, that's one of our members as well. All language schools, K-12, so any of the educational pathways, we are part of our members. And what we do is support bringing international students like yourselves to Nova Scotia. And many of you might be aware that we have a really unique product that we offer, so the Study and Stay. So what that is focused on is trying to help international students like yourself to find ways to stay in Nova Scotia once you have graduated. So there you might see on your campus, there's a lot of information on the Study and Stay program, and I would encourage you all to really pay attention to it because our intention is to make sure that we keep a lot of the awesome international students like you here in Nova Scotia and help you to thrive.
Thanks. Nicole already introduced me. That's great. I'm Katie Youre. I'm the International Director at the Nova Scotia Community College. So similar to Mount St. Vincent University, we have an international office that works with our incoming international students, outbound study abroad programs, and also technical assistance projects that we do in other countries, and also our partner relations.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so how has your education and experience led you to your current position? So we'll start with you.
Thank you. So I really believe that education does not lie within the four walls of a classroom. I think education and experience go both hand in hand if you're trying to advance in any career, in any industry. I was fortunate enough that growing up in Malaysia, my family had the means to send me abroad to study, and that began my education experience. And through my public relations education here at MSVU, there were many opportunities thrown at me. One of them would be the Co-operative education program. And in my last co-op term, I worked for the Public Affairs Office, which is now restructured into the Department of University Relations, the department that I work in now. And so I really believe that not only is education a vital path to lead you in that right direction, I believe that the experiences that you proactively seek out for yourself, whether it's in the form of volunteering, whether it's in the form of leadership, or showing motivation, self-motivation, and saying yes to all the opportunities that are thrown at you, really will mold you in that right path. And that's what I did when I came to Canada to study. I said yes. Every time I was asked whether I wanted to volunteer, I said yes every time the Students' Union had an initiative and needed help. So I was really involved with the International Society here, the Student Refugee Program. And I think, you know, adding all of those different elements would really make you stand out, show that you have initiative, that you are a self-starter.
So I think, my education has been quite diverse. I spent a lot of my career in international markets. I have worked almost everywhere, almost every continent in the world. And I started off my education within the UK, and I used a lot of the experiences that were afforded to me as an international student while I was in the UK to really try to grasp my career. I started off studying economics and just happened one day to stumble into a class that was doing marketing. And I was so excited by just listening to the lecture that I thought maybe I should pick this up. I had not taught at the time that, as a third-year student, picking up an entire new different program meant that I would have so much extra work. So it was a challenging thing, but it turned out to be great. I spent a lot of my career doing marketing, and that has been a natural segue into what I'm doing right now. And then I went straight into management, which is a complete complete flip from what I was doing before, but that opened a lot of opportunity for me to work within the federal government for Canada. So I spent 10 years of my career working as a senior trade commissioner for the federal government, and then when I moved back to Nova Scotia, I worked in the provincial government. So what I found with my education is taking those risks, taking on different things that you might not have taught when you started your education. I literally had not thought I would pick up marketing, but when I started my education, I thought, yep, I was probably going to be an economist and I was going to stick in that area. So taking the opportunity to pivot where opportunity arises for you, following your passions, and really trying to put yourself in the perspective where you can benefit from people's knowledge. I think those are some of the paths that I took that has been very helpful to me in terms of supporting where I am today from taking those opportunities in my education.
Great. Well, I guess I'd echo these two. I did an undergrad degree at King's College in political science, and then I was an international student for a year in France. I'm not sure how good a student I was, but I really loved living in France and drinking wine and eating cheese. So I decided, how can I do that? Oh, I'll become a diplomat, just like Nicole or Professor Whalen. So I came back and I did my master's in international politics at Dalhousie, and I really got involved in everything, just like these two said. And I would say that the extracurricular opportunities, I got to know my professors better, you know, model United Nations, all kinds of things. And it was through a connection with one of my professors who I did some research work for. And professors are always looking for paid and unpaid researchers. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved in volunteer or work related to that. Look around. I was connected through him to some opportunities to do a 2-year assignment with World University Service of Canada in Africa, in a little country called Malawi. And I didn't end up with my dream job, which was Nicole's job. She had the job, I guess, so I couldn't get it. But I ended up in the international education field by accident and by opportunity and by saying yes. So we'll talk more about that later.
Okay, it's always difficult going last, right? Thank you, ladies. So I entered the workforce straight from my... I entered the workforce straight from undergrad. I'm one of the few people, I think, that started my path in tourism and finishing my path in tourism. But I was lucky to be accepted. British Airways, which is a flagship carrier for the UK, took 20 graduate students in their graduate management program, and I was fortunate to be one of those. So without my undergrad, that path would not have been possible for me. Fast forward, I obviously have been in the industry a long, long time, 25 years in the tourism industry. I emigrated to Canada 20 years ago, and I then decided to pursue my MBA. Once I got my MBA again in tourism, I decided that I wanted to use my expertise in the industry. I had a passion for teaching, and I decided the two needed to go hand in hand. I wanted to make sure I could connect what the students were looking for versus what the competitive industry was looking for. So I felt that was a natural fit for me. So here I am. I then decided to pursue my PhD in tourism, which I'm currently completing right now. So what I'm finding more and more as I'm still so connected to the industry is more and more, middle management and upper management companies are looking they want the best of the best, and they want you as students to differentiate yourself from, the hundreds and hundreds of resumes that they get. And we're finding over coffee room break discussions, we're finding more and more that these companies are actually looking for MBA type programs now. So we're finding the goalposts are moving a little bit, and I think just a word of advice, be prepared to continue your journey. I think all of us are on that lifelong learning plan, whether it be through formal education, but use everything that's around you through your connections, your work experience, and your education, because all three of those components have to come hand in hand to complete that circle.
Thank you. Okay. So, what do you like about your work, and what do you dislike about it? So, start with you, Nicole.
So I would say what I like about my work has been the same thing I've loved about my career throughout, the last 20 plus years. I really like meeting people, and my job entails meeting people of all walks of life from all different countries, and really just trying to understand some of the things that are motivating to people and some of the experiences that they've had. So that has been a thread that I can trace through my entire career. The 25 years that I've been working. I would say what I dislike is probably not that much. I find that within business you have to manage relationships, and sometimes you have personalities that might be hard to manage, but the good comes with the bad, and what I have found is that very often people are better if it is that you are open to listening to them. So in my own experience, I have started to, when I find someone that's difficult or challenging, just stepping back a bit and figuring out maybe they have a personal circumstance that I'm not aware of, and just reminding myself to not judge and just be chill for a bit, and then often the relationship tends to come out after that. So not something that I really that I can truly say that I dislike, but I've learned to manage.
See, she really is a diplomat. That's why she's a diplomat. I'm not. I love as well connecting with other people, meeting and learning about new places. But I really like the creative process of my work, and I have a lot of freedom to do that, which is great. They say, go ahead, create these opportunities for the college, create these opportunities for students and faculty, and but they don't always give me any money to do that. So that's where the creative part comes in. But I think that creative energy is what I thrive on. What I dislike is, I guess, if you put me into a room like this with a lot of great energy like you guys have, and to think about how we're going to solve a problem or have some action, that is a dream day. If you put me in a long, boring management meeting, don't tell my boss, where we're not going to really come to the solution. I don't really like that, but it's one of the things you have to do sometimes to earn your paycheck and smile and nod and do a great job.
For me, again, I think we've all got something in common here. We all love people. We all probably love to talk. I've been told that on many occasions. But I think one of the things I really like, I love a challenge. I think I've just got that tenacious personality that, I don't take no easily for an answer. And I think particularly in the industry that I'm in, we've seen many, many, many challenges over the years. So for me to be able to see a new market grow, or for me to secure a contract within a new market that we've been massaging for years and years is something, very, very exciting for me and very fulfilling. I also like to see our industry, as I've seen growth over the last 25 years, particularly the Canadian industry, become much more professional, being able to compete globally against the bigger players in the world. So all of that is some external satisfaction that I get, but it's all part of the role that I play within that, whether it be me on a task force or, a board-appointed position. All of us have a role to play. We're not in isolation. It's such a partnership between many, many government departments and private sector to actually connect that gap. So for me, that's very, very fulfilling. What do I dislike about it? Again, on the flip side of that this tourism industry isn't seen as a career. I find that a little bit frustrating. We've got one hand, many of us really trying to push that out to make sure that it's not seen, as a jolly job. And you've only got to look at government tourism ministers would be seen as having, a very, very cushy number compared to, maybe Department of Health or something. So, we all have our reasons for that, but it is a reality that we have to try and overcome. So that's it. I could go on and on about HR and accounting and all that boring stuff, but I'll leave that for another question.
There are so many things that I enjoy about my job every day, and I think that lends itself to your own well-being. So I love working with people as well, and my job allows me to do that on a daily basis. I talk to students and parents and partners and government affiliates. And most importantly, though, I get to help international students realize their opportunities of study in Canada. And I take great pride in that work that I do, and knowing that in some small way that I am helping them achieve their career dreams. There are about two things that I love and that I do not about my job, and they are the same thing. So I have a love-hate relationship with these two things. Number one, and a side effect of my current job responsibility is travel. While it may seem ultra glamorous to travel to 8 different countries and stay in different hotels in a matter of 10 weeks at a time, it really takes its toll on your mental well-being and your personal well-being as well. You are disconnected from your home, Canada, you're disconnected from your friends and your family, and sometimes, even though it may sound insignificant, you're disconnected from the office, and life still goes on with or without you. So that does take its toll. But on the flip side of that, I get to absorb so much local culture in the limited spare time that I do have, and it's been such an eye-opening experience for me. And the second thing that I have a love-hate relationship with is international business culture. Okay, doing business internationally can be eye-opening, exhilarating, interesting, but also frustrating. Take, for example, if we were to have a meeting today in Canada, I would expect that it would last about an hour. We come in, we have firm handshakes, we discuss the agenda items of the day, maybe we compromise, how are we going to move forward, what's the next action item, and that's it. Meeting ends, adjourned, okay? In some cultures, when I arrange a meeting with a partner or a school, I know that it might take up to 4 to 5 hours of my day. Because in business cultures in different places, they expect that when you are doing a business deal, that trust should be built. And how do we build this trust? We have a discussion, sure, maybe for an hour, but then you might be invited to a meal. And through this meal, they will try to gather as much insight and information from you to see, can this person deliver on the promises that they have just spoken about? And then perhaps after the meal, there will be some tea time. Okay, so the meeting goes for much longer than it would in perhaps, say, North America. And those are the things that if you don't understand can frustrate you if you are not ready or prepared. So I have a love-hate relationship with both of those things.
And okay, so the next question is, what do you find the most challenging about your work?
What do I find most challenging? First of all, I have been in my new role for just over 3 weeks. So that. So I think I will probably speak more broadly in terms of what I find challenging just generally in careers as opposed to just my role. I think just being able to remain connected to the ever-changing geopolitical issues in the world. For those of us, 3 of us here that work predominantly in education, just imagine what our life looks like every single time you turn on the TV and there's a massive change in the world. There's an outbreak. There's, there's an issue with one of the governments that had a partnership with Canada, there's a partnership you thought that was in place that, for whatever reason, has been broken obviously something that you have no control over. And that I find to be quite challenging. You have to constantly stay nimble, the ability to constantly keep updated with issues that are happening in the world that are, thousands of miles away, that can absolutely affect your ability to do your work. That can be quite challenging. But I would also say that on the flip side of that, there's challenge, but very often challenge is the wave that brings in opportunity. So remaining within that interesting little space to look to see when those challenges have happened, where are the potential opportunities that you have to be aware of, and staying fairly nimble to ensure that you're able to go after them. So the challenge, is often for me an area where I'm paying enough attention to because I see the opportunity behind the wave.
Another great answer. I hate following you, Nicole. That's really bad. I think I would say, like Ashley Jane, a lot of the challenges are also opportunities. But I'm continually amazed that not everyone agrees with me all the time and shares the same beliefs and understanding about how amazing international education is and all the great opportunities. So, and sometimes the people that you need to persuade about things are within your own institution. And so I guess the biggest challenge sometimes for me is to be patient and spend time understanding my colleagues' challenges, because sometimes the actual international work can be easier with the partners than it is within your own institution. And so we're part of a big change that's happening in Canada. There's a huge change with international immigration and education and immigration and so on. International students are changing Canada. And we are one of the conduits to making that successful. And sometimes it takes a lot of patience. So I don't always have that.
Okay, as I said, Nicole was, I'm going to echo somewhat to that, but I'm going to obviously be looking at it from a private sector standpoint. I think for me, always working a year ahead when we're looking at the working schedule currently and how we book contracts and that sort of thing, we're always at least a year or 18 months ahead. So you're always wishing your life away and you can never really live in the moment and enjoy it, which is really frustrating because you're always thinking ahead. And I think the other thing for me is being impacted by external issues that you don't see coming, you have no control over, and it's the most frightening thing. And I'm looking at it from a private sector standpoint. Just give, this year has been absolutely brutal with the Boeing MAX 8 nightmare. Overnight, I completely lost the UK market because here on the East Coast, we're relying on Air Canada. And they're certainly, obviously, where the revenue is out west. So they're not really going to be too concerned what's going on out here. So overnight, we lost the UK market with connections to Europe. We had to rely on WestJet, which is not a 7-day-a-week schedule. So, and people don't want to backtrack, obviously. Us Brits, we like direct wherever we go. So don't do where we change. So that was something that being nimble, having a business plan that has option B, option C, option D. It's being nimble to be able to change that business plan, to be able to look at diversification with markets is critical for us, not putting all your eggs in one basket and understanding how one can impact the other. Another example is the coronavirus, obviously. Our company is very fortunate to be working with the new flight that's coming into Halifax in September, and we got told this week that that's completely on hold. So, of course, 350 new export dollars coming into Halifax is now on hold. So we have to change very quickly to decide, that great Chinese market that we were going after and we thought was going to come to fruition is not going to happen. Brexit we're dealing with, people that hate it, want to get away, people that are too scared of it, don't want to spend any money. So we're dealing with that. The Trump effect is great. Any of those political external environments are impacting us as an industry. So it's understanding that not all things go to plan, and you have to make sure that you have a backup plan of B and C at all times, and not die of stress in the process.
My answer is exactly the same as my lovely colleagues here on the table. If you were to ask me right now, what do you find the most challenging about your work? My challenges change on a daily basis, and right now it would be the novel coronavirus. I work mainly with students and parents and partners in the other side of the world, of our beautiful planet, and I feel for the relationships and for my friends and for my partners on the other side. And because of these external factors that happen that are out of your control, when you're trying to achieve an objective or advance a relationship with an international partner, all things will come to a pause. And so I guess in a way, seeing that as an opportunity, as a challenge to think about what innovative solutions can we come up with to further advance the goals that you're trying to achieve. When you're working in international business, as Maria has mentioned, you're thinking way ahead before an actual plan or project is implemented. And when a pause button is placed upon this project, what do you do now, right? So seeing that as an opportunity to think of an innovative way to come up with a solution together, whether you're in Canada or on the other side of the world. So that would be the most challenging part of my role.
Okay, and next question, we'll start with Katie at the end. How do you spend an average day when you are in Canada and when you travel outside the country? What do you do first thing when you arrive at work?
It's a great question, and I'm very fortunate. It's not for everyone. I don't really have any routine days, except, like I said, for those boring management meeting days. And when I'm on the road, when you're traveling internationally, you're on all the time. So like Ashley Jane was saying, that's one of the challenges. Sometimes it's okay too, because when you have jet lag, you can catch up on your email. So I would say staying connected is the first thing that I try to do when I get to work. But I might be getting to work at at 9 o'clock at night, when it's 9 o'clock in the morning here when the emails start coming in. So balancing that, but at the same time as staying connected, I guess, is how I would start an average day. Another thing is gaining the discipline when you're doing that kind of international work to set some reasonable boundaries for yourself, but take advantage of those opportunities to network when you're away and when you're here. So it's kind of like it is a balancing act, and you have to be flexible to take advantage of those opportunities. But I would say I rarely have an average day, I guess.
Well, that's interesting. I've had many average days. So I think for me, my day typically starts where I am just really looking to see whatever change has happened during the night when I decided not to look at my cell phone. So really making sure that I'm updated on every single issue that's going on, making sure there's no fires that I need to put out. So that's the beginning of my day. Sometimes that's with or without coffee. On good days, it's with coffee. So, the rest of my day can be quite a lot of meetings. We have a lot of partners and a lot of members that are part of EduNova's group of institutions, and making sure that we're talking to international governments where there might be issues regarding partnerships that we can be leveraging, speaking to the domestic government here in the province and our funders. So a lot of those kind of engagements throughout the entire day. So really keeping on top of the relationships. As I said before, it really is interesting to me to talk to people and meet people and understand some of how we can work better to support international education. So most of my day is spent doing that type of work, whether it's locally or with our international partners. If I am out of the country, I have spent a lot of my career, as I've mentioned, working internationally. And one thing that always jumps out to me when I'm in wherever I am in the world is just trying to hear what people just the average person has to say. So not just my typical meetings that I would go to, but listening to just people that I encounter I might meet them on the street, I might meet a cab driver. It's always interesting to hear a perspective on a market that is not sanitized. So it's not coming to you through a diplomat, or it's not coming to you through a minister. They have no ulterior motive. So that's important to me. And also just trying to ensure that as I'm getting that intelligence, how does that change our plans in terms of working in that market? Just listening to both the sanitized version that I know I will get in a meeting, but also that unsanitized version, that's the true reality of the market when I'm going into it. So that's sort of what my international day would look like if I'm traveling, and what my domestic day looks like when I'm here, often with coffee.
Honestly, as I wake up in the morning, and I do this every day, whether I'm here in Halifax or somewhere in Southeast Asia, I check the news. That is ultra important to me because I want to know what's happening, what's trending, what's cool with the grade 12 students that I'm talking to. But I also want to know what's the hot topic of the day and how that's going to dictate my work tomorrow or in 3 years. So I feel that it's ultra important to be updated with the news globally and locally. So that's what I do in the morning every day with my coffee, and then I get to work, and for every morning with my colleagues, I have coffee with them, and we talk about our day, what's to come, what's happening in the next few weeks, or what happened yesterday. So we spend half an hour with each other every morning before we separate and go into our own offices. And when I'm traveling, I try my best to maintain that first routine, because I need routine to know that, okay, I'm grounded, I am here. And so I check the news and I have my coffee, whether it's in the hotel room or whether it's downstairs at the hotel lobby. And usually while I'm traveling, as Katie mentioned, you're always on, and I will always have to expect the unexpected. Sometimes there are meetings that will come at you on the day of that you had no idea of 12 hours ago. So I have to be ready to expect that.
Okay, so obviously when I was involved in the day-to-day of the operations, first thing I would have a cup of tea rather than coffee, being British. And first thing I do is prioritize my day. So I try and not get, time management for me is critical, as it is for everyone. But, prioritize my emails, decide what I'm responding to, what I'm not, prioritize my to-do, list to-do items during the day, and then I would connect with my Nova Scotia office and my Newfoundland office to find out if there was any pressing issues, and then really deal with what you're dealt with during that day. Now, overseas is interesting because usually you're in market. It's a great networking opportunity. I would be there to not only discuss contracts with clients, I'm looking at future clients. I'm always looking for that networking opportunity. Plus as well, I make sure that I can meet with government departments, whether it be Destination Canada, or I would do training. I would just make the most of things that we can't do through Skype meetings or Zoom meetings, make the most of being there in person and really get out and about as much as possible and make sure you're in face of people that you need to be in front of. So for me, it's making use of that time while you're on their turf, as it were.
Perfect. Okay, question 6. And what do you see as the key skills needed to work in international business today? So we'll start with you, yes.
Hi again. I think we've sort of covered it off, but I think particularly when you're dealing with international markets, I think you have to stay connected. And we've all said that being connected, what current trends are happening, what's happened overnight, what you're hearing about is really critical to, and it isn't even about you forming an opinion, it's about being in the moment and being aware of what's happening globally and how that may impact the markets that you're actually currently involved with. Being nimble, I think I alluded to that through my, answering the question earlier. Being able to, and I'm fortunate being in that private sector world where we can be a little bit more nimble versus, having to go through bureaucracy. At least we can sort of make a decision, own it, and get on with it, and try and implement that action plan as best we can. We have to be able to maneuver quickly to all of those external disruptions. So for me, to me, that is, being an informed citizen, being an informed student, being present and able and engaged in life in general. I think that will, for me, that's key skills that you need to be able to work in the international marketplace.
I have a list for you. Are you ready? No, okay. So what do I see as the key skills needed to work in international business today? I think the most important would be adaptability, right? You have to be able to remain calm and level-headed when things come at you that are unexpected, or when there's unnecessary pressure or demand placed upon you, whether it's traveling or during a business meeting. So adaptability, cultural awareness, keeping yourself informed, and then, as I said previously, being able to expect the unexpected, right? So having that adaptable nature would really go far.
So for me, I think there's a lot that's already been said, but perhaps the most poignant for me is the ability to be culturally sensitive. I will tell you an interesting story of a Canadian Crown Corp that lost a contract because of cultural awareness, lack of cultural awareness. I was working internationally, and this Canadian, this is a Canadian Crown Corporation, and the company had been in a deal with a government to provide sustainable technologies for energy generation. And this project was worth about 1.3 billion Canadian dollars. And the persons that represented this Crown Corp walked into the room with myself and met with a prime minister and made the comment, "You people." We walked out of the room, the deal was done. The Canadian Crown Corp did not get that contract. Now, the fact of the matter is understanding who you're talking to, understanding how they perceive cultural sensitivities around who they are and how they should be referred to. Going into the market, knowing that beforehand is critically important. And I think with the fact that we have become so connected in social media, there's this tendency to think that you know people and you know culture, but you might not. So spend your time investigating, understanding what it's like to do business in that culture. As Ashley Jane has said, really trying to find those bits of things that connect you to the culture without being offensive. So that to me is probably the most critical part that anyone should know going into any market. Don't make assumptions, find out what is culturally appropriate.
Right on. Listening, learning, thinking, more than talking. That sounds weird coming from all of us, but I think that's really important in international business. Observing, looking at the room, understanding what people do. And you cannot assume, I don't consider myself an expert in any one particular country, even our own, because it's so complicated, and we're constantly learning and need to be aware of those things, intimately aware. Another thing that you guys are going to have to deal with, no matter what kind of career you do, is multi-generational workplaces. And my generation is really annoying, and so is the generation older than us. Actually, we're all annoying in our different ways, but navigating those things I think is important. One major difference that I notice with people my age and maybe people in most of this room's age is technology. And people my age like to complain about technology a lot. Oh, it's ruining my life and everything. I think it's amazing. My phone talks to space. I don't have to go to the library and send a print job and wait for 20 minutes for it to come out, and I don't know what it looks like. Anyway, you guys don't even know what I'm talking about, but it is incredible. And then at the same time, generations that are way more comfortable with technology, an over-reliance on the technology rather than the face-to-face, particularly in international business, is challenging. So I think adapting, and each country and culture is different in how you interact mostly, is really, really important when you're dealing with different countries, different generations, different kinds of workplaces.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful. So we'll move on to question 7. Can you tell us about the types of jobs that might be available for students considering a career with your company or organization? Or you could just touch on entry-level international business, or how you get into the career. And we'll start with Ashley Jane.
Well, if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about how we communicate with our external stakeholders, or if you want to help with talking to international and Canadian students, we have several roles available within my department. Some are in the co-op positions. We always hire a communications assistant every year, so if you're a co-op student, you can check out the opportunity in the co-op office. We also have the Student Works program. Does everybody know what a Student Works program is? Yes? Okay, we have one hand. I'm very sad. So the Student Works program is a bursary program. You get 12 hours of work per week, part-time on campus, and it pays about $13 to $14 per hour. Okay, so our office is part of the Student Works program, and you can apply to become a recruitment assistant or an alumni relations assistant, or if you're just interested in volunteering, we have the Student Ambassadors program. So if you're interested in finding a really cool opportunity where you meet lots of different people from different parts of Canada and the US, people who come to campus to view and tour, you can be part of the Student Ambassadors program. So if you're interested, let me know. Or you can ask Lillian, she's part of the Student Ambassadors program as well.
So there are quite an array of careers that we would have under EduNova's umbrella. So communications people, obviously trying to get the message out there wherever we're going to be in the world, talking about events that we're doing to support international recruitment efforts. So communications is definitely one. I mentioned when we started about our Study and Stay program, which really is working with international students like yourselves to understand how to go through the process. So there's Study and Stay coordinators that we have as part of the EduNova group of the team. So if you were interested in working with international students and helping them to understand how to navigate just the quagmire of thinking of how to stay in Nova Scotia once you've graduated, there are actual coordinators that we have that are working with students like yourselves. So they're taking you through the process of understanding the immigration, of understanding how do you go through that process of how do you get connected to a job, how do you get a mentor. So an international recruitment coordinator is a really crucial part of what we would have as a role that helps to support international students. Another role that we have in the organization is just, the one that most people would not pay enough attention to is just managing the operations of the day-to-day runnings of trying to keep an NGO like EduNova afloat. So working with our partners to get funds, to get programs out there to ensure that we are actually able to remain sustainable and viable. So there's opportunities within that operational aspect that is part of the roles that we would have, and of course recruitment. So I think Ashley has done a great job of talking of what that really looks like in working internationally to recruit students. So there's a lot of those different things that we do across the organization, but I would say for international students like yourself, one of the best ways to think about getting involved is through our volunteer opportunities. So we have a lot of students that are volunteering as part of the EduNova group that, we've actually hired people from, specifically through that is working on our student programs like the Study and Stay. And those are really good avenues by which you can stay engaged and really make sure that you are being present and we're seeing that you're interested in this as a career. So those are things that you can consider as it relates to EduNova.
Okay, I've got a question for you guys. How many of you your dream is to have an international business or an international career? Just hold up your hands. Are you really sure? Because if you are, put up your hand really high so I can see it. I'm old. Okay, that's great. About half of you. I think that you might end up being really surprised because Nova Scotia and Canada is changing so fast, and certainly a career in international education wasn't even a thing when I was in university. And we are trying to, tourism is growing, for example. That's an international career. Our companies in Nova Scotia, we're trying to get more and more and more of them exporting. So even here, your workplaces are going to become more international as we welcome more immigrants. A lot of things are going to change. So international business skills that you can gain while you're at university through the work opportunities that you have here at Mount St. Vincent, which is fantastic, and volunteering in your communities and so on are so important because we're all going to need those international skills as things change and evolve into the future. But I'd add, beyond your interest in, maybe what I thought I would end up doing in France, riding a bicycle and having the baguette and the wine and stuff, is more than your specific, more general university training, some skills that you can offer, because I think what we all talked about are specific things in an office setting that you can make yourself really useful and indispensable to that company that's becoming more international. You guys have a lot to offer.
Okay, so obviously at my company, we've hired students, from office administration programs, business, tourism, obviously that lends itself, marketing, accounting, PR. So, you can see that there's, real, multi-dimensional skills that we take from various different programs. And I think one thing, that we've seen dramatically change, particularly with access to all of you guys having international students at our fingertips, is that translation services and connecting the supply and the demand piece of on-the-ground international tourists with, native speaking students is really critical for us, and we're seeing that obviously more and more with our Chinese program that we're trying to work on. The other thing that I do strongly suggest that you do as students is try and get involved, whether it's with the Business and Tourism Society, whether it's attending Chamber of Commerce events, whether it's networking through our team event that we have a fundraiser for our tourism department, whether it's getting involved with SCAL, which is a globally recognized tourism association member-driven group. So there's so much networking that's currently going on in Halifax right now that really will help you connect to, international markets across multifaceted companies.
Okay. Did you get a chance to answer?
Okay. So it's the question was, what advice could you share with a student at the start of their career? And I think the key part of this question is the word start, the beginning of your career. I really would encourage you to be a sponge, okay? Absorb as much information and experiences as possible. Sometimes being a sponge can take days, months, even years. And that's okay, because absorbing all that information will put you in that right direction. There's no set formula for career progression. Just be patient. It's important also that you find a path that you like, a career, a job that you would really enjoy. In a way that I'm assuming that you all found MSVU because you thought perhaps MSVU offers the best fit. So should your career. You should always look for the right fit because you should always be satisfied with what you are doing. And so if there was any piece of advice, that would be it.
Yeah, I'll just ask you to give your final piece of advice for our students.
It's okay. Okay. So my final piece would be learn and embrace the value of networking. For those of you that are here in the room today, within a couple of months or years, whenever you graduate, you're going to be in dire need of finding that person that you've networked with that is comfortable giving you a reference. Understanding that when you're in these type of settings, using the opportunity to stay connected, reaching out to people, making sure you attend those events so that you network and you build those connections that can help you later on in your career is very critical. As I mentioned when I started, the types of engagements that I've had in my career, I could not have had it not been for my ability to leverage my networks. For me to walk up to someone and said, hi, remember we met at this time? I started doing that since I was in university, and it has helped me time and time again. Don't use, when you get invited to events like this, don't just show up because of the fact that's like, well, it's like something I have to do and I just have to tick it off. Use them wisely, because you never know where you're going to be in a couple of years and who you would want to say, hey, remember we met? Can you help me? So use them wisely, use the opportunity to network, and when you do get a chance to step up in front of someone, understand your elevator pitch. Your elevator pitch should be literally, what do you want someone to know about you? What should I remember about you? Think it through, internalize it, so that every time you meet someone and you're able to take the opportunity to talk about it, that you don't have to stand there, oh, well, what should I say? You should already have it well honed. So network and finalize what your elevator pitch is going to look like, because you're going to need it. You never know who you're going to bump into on the elevator.
I better go work on my elevator pitch, Nicole. I think one thing that I would suggest is that you say yes to more opportunities, and you guys are young, and you have the time available when you get older to do all kinds of weird things will diminish quickly. So saying yes more than no is a really great idea. Don't doubt yourself. Try something new. This is the time to do that. And I've done all kinds of weird things in my career that didn't seem very linear, like you were saying, Ashley Jane. International election monitor in different countries, working for the Red Cross, working with refugees, working anything that I could do that I could, have a connection to international stuff was just fascinating to me. And I'm really glad that I pushed myself on those things and didn't doubt myself and tried and learned by making mistakes along the way. But really take advantage of those opportunities when you have them.
A lot of what I'm going to say is just be repeated, so I will be brief because I can see the time. I'm going to get ejected. So patience is key, and we all, Rome wasn't built in a day, for the old cliche, but it wasn't. And I think you have to understand that, be a sponge, take your time, and understand the path that you want to take. This is your journey. Be passionate. You've got to get out of bed every morning. You have to want to get out of bed. The day that I don't is the day that I don't want to work. You have to be open-minded. Don't have one set path. We all maneuver in different ways and have to be conscious that could be possibly your journey as well. So the last thing I want to say is, whatever industry you're getting into, try and make sure that you understand the industry that you're getting into. How does it work? Who the players are? How do they fit together? How does the partnership work? What role do they play in the overall picture to be able to connect those dots? I think, that doesn't happen overnight, but don't be afraid. No such thing as a stupid question, right? Be conscious of always wanting to ask those types of questions. And it'll serve you well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much. We want to give a round of applause for our awesome panelists. Okay, so now we have our open Q&A session. So I have an extra microphone here. It's just a small crowd, so if anyone feels that they have a question, now's your time. No pressure. We're all friends. Okay, I have a question. I will ask one. So a lot of the time, when you guys were mentioning you're on travel, it seems that sometimes you're focused on working really individually. And a lot of our students, being a student can feel like a very individual experience sometimes. You're going to your classes by yourself, stuff like that. So what are some tips of advice you could say for being an international business, but also trying to work as part of a team when you might not be with those team members? Anyone can feel free to answer, chime in.
I think for me, technology is the key. I think we're all working in different time zones, and for us, it's not always possible to be obviously in the same place at the same time. So for us, it's making sure that we utilize technology to the best of our advantage, because it could be a 12-hour time difference. So for me, it's technology.
I guess I'd say you got to make sure you're keeping your boss happy by keeping in touch with your team at home. Through technology, obviously, which is a great gift. But I think we work in lots of different kinds of teams, and I end up collaborating with people from lots of different organizations when I'm on the ground, and very often I'm not by myself, even if I want to be. And that is a different, you're kind of shifting gears, and maybe it's a different kind of connectivity when you're away, and you might be working in a team of people who are from lots of different institutions too.
So I think, listening to my colleagues, I think they've all shared that your team can look very different. You might have a domestic team that you're relying on here back at your office, but when you are wherever you are in the world working, there's an opportunity there to leverage those teams as well, and try to ensure that your communication is frequent, and it's open and active with whichever team members you're working with. I think in the university setting, you have a lot of opportunity to work within teams, and even though you are working as an international student on your own, or as a student within your own context, you still have those opportunities to work in teams. What you would notice when you get into the job environment is that the ability to understand how to navigate teams, how to communicate effectively, how to understand working within teams where there might be difficult people, just learning those communication skills are very transferable into the workplace. So I think, whether you're internationally or you're working within your office, I think you'll find that learning those team dynamics that you are learning right now and bringing them into the workplace in a healthy way is a good thing that you are going to be learning and bringing into a job environment.
Traveling internationally for work, as you said, Cassidy, can be a very solo experience, this individual student experience from going class to class. And sometimes I find sort of camaraderie in colleagues that do the same job as I do, because it's a very solo experience. So finding groups that are like-minded, that share your passions, can really help in terms of maintaining your mental well-being as well as your physical as well, because it can be a rather individual solo experience when you're traveling by yourself. So.
Thank you for answering my question. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, I'll come with you.
Hi. So my question is is there any period of time that you guys feel like you guys lost, like you guys want to quit in the job? And then what are the motivations that you guys overcome, Yeah.
So I'll take that. Every day. Just know that as a professional, it's not unusual to feel lost. I think what I've heard from my colleagues really has resonated with me in terms of what your experience can be. Just understand that if you find that thing that you really enjoy getting out of bed for in the morning, you can never feel lost. Even if it feels confusing, you're just not truly lost. So that can be your motivator. So find something that you know that you can be passionate about, something that is not just a job, but it's a career. So think about it that way, and then you will find that every day you can get out of bed. And if, as Maria said, if you cannot get out of bed, it's probably time to no longer be in that career. So being comfortable also with the ability to step away from something sometimes, if it is that it's not bringing you joy, that's fine too. I mean, you got to pay your bills. But at the end of the day, you also should be doing something that you truly love. So find that passion, and you will always be able to get out of bed and never feel that challenged by it.